the Christmas that wasn't meant for me. This Christmas was supposed to feel like every other, full of warmth, laughter, and the familiar chaos of wrapping paper and sugar cookies. Instead, it began with a sentence I'll never forget. My daughter-in-law looked me square in the eye and said, "We're spending Christmas at my mother's this year. You can stay home and rest." I didn't argue. I just smiled, wished them a wonderful holiday, and hung up the phone. But the moment the call ended, the house around me fell completely silent. My name is Linda Dawson. I'm 67, and I live in a little snow-covered town in Colorado, in the same cozy house my husband Paul and I bought nearly 40 years ago. The cinnamon-scented walls hold decades of laughter and photographs, memories of birthdays, burnt pies, and winters spent huddled by the fire. Since Paul passed 8 years ago, those walls have become both my comfort and my cage. Every December, my son Mark and his wife Hannah would invite me over for Christmas. I'd bake my famous pecan pie, help hang ornaments, and wrap little presents for the grandchildren. It wasn't perfect, but it made me feel like I still belonged. Like I still mattered. This year, though, something had changed. Hannah's voice had grown colder over time, her calls shorter, her tone more polite than kind. Even Mark seemed distant, calling only when it was convenient. Still, I told myself not to make a fuss. Families get busy, after all. Children grow up and start their own lives. That S, what mothers tell themselves, when their hearts start to ache. A week before Christmas, when I finally asked what time to come over, Hannah simply said, "We're doing it at my mom's this year. It's easier for everyone. Easier for everyone. Except me." That night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the Christmas tree twinkling softly in the corner. Every decoration had a memory, every light a heartbeat. I'd spent days preparing for a family that wouldn't arrive. I opened my old photo album, Mark as a child grinning with a missing tooth, Paul carving the turkey, the three of us under the same twinkling tree. I whispered, "It's just one Christmas, Linda. You'll be fine." But deep down, I knew I wasn't fine. It wasn't about the holiday. It was about being forgotten. And yet, as the snow began to fall outside, an unexpected thought began to form. A whisper that would change everything. What if this Christmas wasn't meant to be spent waiting, but beginning again? The flight of a forgotten heart. The following morning, I woke up to the sound of wind brushing against my window. The world outside was blanketed in white, quiet, beautiful, and cold. I made myself a cup of tea, the same way I had every morning for years, but somehow, even the warmth of the mug felt hollow. When my phone rang, I half hoped it was Mark, saying they had changed their minds. But when I answered, his voice carried a trace of guilt instead of joy. "Hey, Mom. I hope you're not upset about Christmas. You know how Hannah's mom loves to host. It's just 1 year, okay?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said softly. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." I lied. After the call, I stood by the window watching the neighborhood kids roll snow into crooked snowmen. Their laughter floated through the cold air, the kind of laughter my home hadn't heard in years. For the first time, I realized that loneliness isn't just silence. It's the echo of everything you used to have. That night, as I sat by the fire with my cat curled up beside me, I thought I heard Paul's voice in my head, teasing like he used to. "You always take care of everyone else, Linda. When's the last time you did something for yourself?" The question lingered long after the fire burned low. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had spent too long waiting to be invited into moments that no longer had room for me. The next day, while tidying the attic, I stumbled upon an old brown suitcase layered in dust. It was the one Paul and I used for our trip to Europe, decades ago. I ran my hand over the worn leather, remembering the thrill in his voice as he said, "See, Linda, the world isn't so big after all. You just have to be brave enough to step into it." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop replaying his words. Before I knew it, I was sitting at my laptop, typing "Christmas tours for seniors" into the search bar. Dozens of bright pictures filled the screen. Christmas markets, snowy towns, glowing lights. One particular tour caught my eye. Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, departing in 3 days. My heart raced. It was ridiculous, reckless, completely unlike me. And yet, it felt right. With trembling hands, I entered my card details and pressed Book Now. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for life to choose me. I was choosing it. She thought she was just booking a trip, but destiny had already reserved her seat. The stranger in Seat, 14B. 3 days later, I stood in the middle of the bustling airport, clutching that same old brown suitcase as if it were an anchor. Families hugged, children ran ahead with excitement, and couples leaned into each other for warmth. For a brief second, I almost turned back. What was a 67-year-old widow doing flying across the ocean alone at Christmas? Then, like a whisper from the past, Paul's words echoed in my head. Be brave enough to step into it. With that, I boarded the plane. My seat was beside a tall man with silver hair and a soft, steady presence. He smiled as I sat down. "Headed home or heading somewhere new?" he asked. "Somewhere new," I replied, surprised by how certain I sounded. He chuckled lightly. "Good answer." His name was David Monroe, a retired literature professor from Seattle. He was traveling alone too. His wife had passed away 5 years ago. When he spoke, there was something calming about him, like the sound of rain on old glass. As the plane soared above the clouds, we talked, not about small things, but about the kind that mattered. He told me how his wife used to love Christmas lights, and how quiet the house felt without her. I told him about Paul, about my son, and the kind of silence that follows being told to stay home. He didn't pity me. He listened, really listened. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. By the time we landed in Munich, it felt as if I had known David for years. Snow drifted across the tarmac like powdered sugar, and the air outside bit cold against my cheeks. Our group of 20 travelers gathered near the bus, and David walked beside me, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The first few days of the tour were magical. Glowing Christmas markets, carols echoing through cathedral halls, and steaming mugs of mulled wine warming cold hands. I caught myself laughing again, really laughing, at David S. dry jokes and the little moments we shared. Two souls who had stopped looking for happiness, only to stumble upon it by accident. On the third night, while snow fell softly over Vienna, we raised our glasses at dinner. "To second chances," David said with a quiet smile. I lifted mine and whispered, "And to finding joy where we stopped expecting it." But little did Linda know, this stranger in seat 14B wasn't just a companion. He was a thread leading straight back to her past. The ghosts that lead us. Home Christmas Eve morning arrived with sunlight glittering over the rooftops of Salzburg. Church bells rang softly through the crisp air as I sipped my coffee, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. I opened my phone to dozens of notifications. Friends commenting on photos I'd had posted from the trip. Old co-workers sending warm messages. But what caught my eye were the texts from Mark. "Mom, where are you? Who's that man in the photo? Please call me." Hannah's worried. I stared at the screen for a long moment before smiling faintly. For years I had waited for my family to notice my absence. Now they finally had, only because I'd found joy without them. I typed back a simple reply with a photo of Vienna, Christmas market glowing in gold light. Merry Christmas from Austria. I'm doing just fine. That evening, our tour group gathered for dinner at a small restaurant overlooking a snow-covered square. Candles flickered on every table, and the faint melody of a violin drifted through the air. David sat across from me, his eyes reflecting the lights like tiny stars. After dessert, he hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Linda, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." His tone was gentle but serious. "I knew your husband, Paul." I froze, the fork slipping slightly from my hand. "You knew Paul?" He nodded. "My brother Stephen served with him in the Navy. I met you once, years ago, at Stephen's house. You probably don't remember. I was just passing through." The memory flickered. A young man with a kind smile and soft-spoken humor, long before gray hair and loss, found us both. "Paul talked about you all the time," David continued quietly. "He said you were the kindest person he'd ever met. When I saw your name on the tour list, I wasn't sure if it could be the same Linda Dawson. But when I saw you at the airport, I knew." Tears filled my eyes. It felt as though life itself had folded in on a perfect circle, as if Paul had somehow sent David to find me when I needed someone most. David reached across the table, his hand warm over mine. "I think Paul would be proud," he said softly. "You've given your whole life to others. It's time to live it for yourself now." In that moment, something inside me healed. Not because someone else fixed it, but because I finally allowed the world to open again. But as Linda's heart began to rediscover love, a message from home would soon test everything she had learned about forgiveness. The Christmas I came home to myself. When I finally returned home from Europe, the air in Colorado felt different. Gentler, somehow. The same snow that had looked lonely weeks ago now shimmered with warmth. I set my suitcase down beside the door and looked around my little house. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Maybe it wasn't the home that felt different. Maybe it was me. The Christmas tree still stood in the corner, its lights glowing faintly like it had been waiting for me. I smiled, brushing a hand across one of the ornaments I bought in Salzburg. A tiny wooden angel with wings dusted in gold. Next to it, I placed the snow globe David had given me, its miniature world glistening under the twinkling lights. On the kitchen table sat a small pile of unopened mail. Among them was a card from Mark and Hannah. Inside was a picture of my grandkids in matching pajamas, all grins and giggles. The message read, "We missed you, Mom. We're sorry. Come over soon. We want to hear everything." It wasn't grand, it wasn't poetic, but it was honest, and that was enough. A few days later, Mark called. His voice was quiet, a little uncertain. "Mom, the kids can't stop talking about you. Can we come over this weekend?" "Of course," I said, smiling. "I'll make my pecan pie." That Saturday, my house was full again. Laughter bouncing off the walls, cinnamon in the air, and tiny feet running from room to room. Hannah helped me set the table. Her eyes carried guilt, but also sincerity. When dinner was over, she looked up from her plate and said softly, "Linda, I owe you an apology. I thought I was making things easier by hosting at my mom's. I see now that I just pushed you away. I'm sorry." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Hannah, we all make mistakes. Family isn't tea about being perfect. It's about forgiving each other when we're not." Mark smiled through glassy eyes. "I don't think I've ever seen you this happy, Mom." I laughed gently. That's because I stopped waiting for life to happen to me. I started living it. Later that night, after they left, I sat by the window watching snow fall under the glow of the streetlights. For the first time in years, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt found by the world, by love, and most of all, by myself. I picked up my phone and typed a simple message to share with everyone who followed my story. When life tells you to stay home, go anyway. The world might just be waiting to welcome you back to yourself. Because sometimes the greatest journey you'll ever take is the one that leads you home again.